Izuku Midoriya is born into a world full of quirks or superpowers, what we would know them as. This would be a pretty normal occurrence for Izuku, just going through life normally would be kind of all the way up until he's about 4 years old. But when he's 4 years old, well, he would be told that he doesn't even have a quirk. Yes, he is quirkless. Nothing, not even a single little tidbit of a quirk. He has nothing attached to him, nothing in his biology, nothing in anything. And this is a bit of a shock because his father does have a fire breathing like quirk and his mother can levitate small objects, so they were expecting him to have some sort of quirk. But as we know, 20% of the world doesn't actually have a quirk, and Izuku is a part of that 20%. But Izuku is extremely happy, extremely smiley, extremely excited, even believing that he can still be a hero from absolutely day one. Like, he honestly, once he is told this, he doesn't even care. He believes that he can still be a hero and be a great one. And even if he can't necessarily be the greatest hero in the world, he could still have great journeys, great adventures, and have some amazing fights. And he wants to thrive in that. And he tells his mother that he wants to learn martial arts. He wants to go around the world if he can. He wants to learn all throughout Japan at least different martial arts, from kickboxing to anything MMA related, to judo, to jiu-jitsu, to anything you could possibly think of. He wants to learn it all, even the most bare bones version of anything, right? That's what he wants to do. He wants to learn so much. And at a young age of like 5 years old, he is enrolled in dojo after dojo, and he continues to just train. Now, in terms of his study habits, they're not amazing, and he's not a dumb kid by any stretch of the imagination, but he definitely has to set aside some time to study more than he really has been. His study habits just aren't really that good, and his intelligence in terms of, the material of schoolwork is just never that good in general. Now, it is, I would say, slightly above average. Like, Izuku's not a dumb kid, but he's also just very, very lazy in terms of the studies. And every single moment of his waking life, he either wants to train, he wants to get stronger, he wants to challenge and fight stronger people, which would be perfect in his martial arts classes. And he would continue wanting to actually adventure, see the entirety of Japan, maybe even outside of it, believing that he can learn so much from so many other people in terms of martial arts. So with all that said and done, well, Inko Midoriya would decide, hey, you know what? I want you to explore the world. I want you to go on these adventures and have fun and meet new people, but we're going to have to make a promise. This promise would be that every time he goes out and he explores, he has to, of course, still learn martial arts and different things from different people, but on top of that, he has to truly learn new things in terms of studying. If it's flora and fauna, if it's nature and or science, if it's reading comprehend, if it's anything like that, anything anywhere, whatever their specialty is, he also has to learn and look into that as well. In which Izuku would end up actually agreeing to this, and this would be basically his way of trying to get a little bit smarter. And basically Inko's way of getting him to be smarter. And Izuku actually does get a good little bit smarter, and it has a little bit better commitment to his studies, but it's really nothing crazy. He still tries his best to stay up on his studies, but he always gets absorbed in the training, always gets absorbed in the fighting, and always gets absorbed in the working and working hard in general, in terms of just training his body, training his fighting skills, and stuff like that. And after years and years and years and years of this, we're talking all the way up until he's about 14, 15 years old, Izuku is a master of many, many martial arts. Like, he is extremely, extremely good at so many different things. He is high level at practically every martial arts you can possibly even think of, and he's a very quick study with the martial arts, and a very quick study with all the stuff that he's been kind of integrated in. Now, one day would occur where he's sitting with all of his classmates in the classroom and his teacher is talking, and he brings up the fact that they're going to do a career aptitude test. Now, of course, they think, or he believes that, oh, all of them want to be heroes anyways, in which they have Izuku and Bakugo trying to get into UA High School. Bakugo would absolutely just talk so much, basically smack to Izuku, saying that he's useless and this and that, and frankly, he basically should just give up right here and right now. But Izuku, just with a smile, not even mad, not angry, nothing. He's just smiling and laughing. He tells Bakugo that it doesn't matter what he thinks, doesn't matter, he's going to do his absolute best, and he's just seeking out more challenges. He just wants more challenges, and he believes that his way into UA is his chance to go on even more adventures and also try out brand new challenges as well, in which Izuku just feels like this is definitely his calling, in which Bakugo is just annoyed by this. He's like, this guy is so irritating. He doesn't even get it, that he's useless and that he shouldn't even be trying to do this because he doesn't even have a quirk. He's just going to die out there. In which, of course, the teacher would eventually shut everything down, telling them all to, wrap it up, and then eventually they would leave. All of them would leave. Now, Izuku would actually be heading under that same bridge that he normally goes under, but he's not actually writing down notes or anything like that. He's actually just kind of taking a stroll. He wants to kind of observe more things throughout, obviously, his location, and he never goes under this bridge and never goes under this area, so he decided, hey, why not? Like, let's just go underneath here. So he walks underneath, and eventually when he passes a manhole cover, the manhole cover would blast open, and it seems like there's a villain, a sludge villain, that bursts out of it, charging at Izuku, saying that he needs his body. Quickly, Izuku reacts, throwing stuff at the sludge villain, but with pretty pinpoint accuracy, hitting the sludge villain in its eyes. Izuku would be able to get out of the tunnel and dodge the sludge villain as he charges into the wall. Izuku would continue dodging until he hears the call out of a Detroit smash, as a wind, or a ton of wind, would come barreling out of the tunnel and would smash into the sludge villain. Izuku standing above on top of the bridge now, looking as the sludge villain splatters into just a million pieces. Izuku is shocked to see this. How the heck? That's insane. Whoever did that was obviously extremely powerful. This is just an amazing thing. He jumps down and looks, and it's All Might himself. Izuku's like, oh my goodness, this is awesome. All Might, I'm such a big fan. You're amazing. You're so powerful. I mean, you lack a little bit of technique, but still, you're awesome and powerful and the best hero ever. In which All Might is a little confused by the whole technique part, but he tells the kid, hey, I mean, thank you, blah, 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 and he would sign his journal, and Izuku was about to ask him another question, but they bottle up the sludge villain, and All Might's about to jump off. But Izuku thinks really quickly and jumps on All Might's leg and tells him that he wants to speak with him some more, that he's sorry, but he needs to know, he needs to learn more from him. He's so strong. How did he get this strong? In which immediately All Might would land on a building, telling the kid he can't do that. Is he a psycho? Like, he could have got himself killed, and he should just be more careful. Like, what was he thinking? And then out of nowhere, All Might would shrink down into Small Might, and everybody would be, or he would be thinking, whoa, what the heck? In which Izuku was looking at him like, where's All Might? Where'd he go? I'm so confused. In which he would look around, looking around the building and so on, and eventually All Might would tell him, no, this is him. He's still All Might. He's just not that big anymore. In which he would explain his injury, what occurred, and so on and so forth, and eventually telling Izuku that he's gonna have to get down some other way, and he's gonna have to just, take the staircase or whatever. In which they would part ways, at least briefly, but then Izuku would be heading home, and he would see something that would drop his basically heart into his chest, or into his stomach, excuse me. And he basically sees the sludge villain attacking. He sees the sludge villain actually capturing somebody, and that person is Bakugo. And he feels awful because he's the reason why the sludge villain even escaped. He's the reason why the sludge villain is even attacking right now. In which he immediately thinks that he has to jump into action. He has to save his friend, even though, well, Bakugo maybe not be the closest friend in the world, but he still needs to jump into action and save his friend. So he does just that, jumping into action, throwing things at the sludge villain, kicking the sludge villain in the eye, and even trying to find some sort of weakness, some sort of kind of scenario where he can somehow defeat this villain. And eventually he would rip Bakugo out of the sludge villain, but the sludge villain would be on the case, trying to grab onto Bakugo once again, in which Izuku would throw Bakugo out of the way while he gets grabbed. Izuku would try to crawl and scratch and crawl his way out, and he would tell the villain that if he could fight, that he would be able to fight him hand to hand, that he would stand no chance. In which Izuku would still try to scrap, trying to go for the eyes, trying to hit the sludge villain at any weak point he possibly can. In which he even tries to blind the sludge villain a little bit with kind of like throwing over something over the eyes of the sludge villain periodically, and trying to basically get out of the scenario that he's in. And I'm gonna be honest, it's not that easy to get out of, especially because he's just a human. He's just normal. In which he is strong, works out and stuff like that, but he's nowhere near the power of the sludge villain. And luckily enough though, All Might would be coming in, and with one Detroit Smash would save Izuku and Bakugo, obliterating the sludge villain once again. And let's just say Izuku would get in quite a bit of trouble. Everybody lecturing him, and he's kind of like, okay, like, I'm tired of hearing the lectures, guys. It's okay, like, everything worked out, like, he saved his friend and stuff like that. And there's really nothing to be worried about, right? It's all good, guys. It's all good. In which, after he leaves and starts heading home, he would actually be interrupted by someone. Well, someone he's actually seen very recently, and that is All Might. All Might tells him that this kid, he's something, that he moves without even thinking, that he's out to save people without even thinking. That's what a true hero, his legs move before his mind even made a decision, and that is what a real hero is. Izuku tells him that, well, that was his friend. That was his friend stuck in that sludge villain, and it was his fault that the sludge villain was, released. So he had to do something. He had to try and save him, and luckily enough, All Might was there, so All Might jumped into action and actually saved them. In which All Might says that he really should have, he really had to do that because, frankly, he wasn't going to. That his power is depleting and stuff like that, and he stops for a second and thinks, you know what? It doesn't matter. He asks the kid, well, what kind of quirk does he have? Like, what can he do? In which Izuku shakes his head. I don't have a quirk at all. I have nothing. In which All Might thinks this is fate. This is exactly what he was looking for, because guess what? When he was younger, he didn't have a quirk either, and Nana Shimura gave him the quirk of One for All, and he tells the kid that he wants him to be his successor. He wants him to pass, or he wants to pass on One for All, the quirk of himself, onto him. In which immediately Izuku's like, are you serious? Like, you're really going to do that? In which All Might says that it's going to take countless hours of training. It's going to take countless hours to learn how to utilize your quirk, and it's not just giving it to you. It's not like you haven't earned it. In which he tells Izuku this, and Izuku is already saying like, no, I already accept. I accept. You're talking about hard work. You're talking about I have to push my body past its limits. I'm all for it. I'm all ready for it. In which Izuku tells him over and over again that he wants to basically utilize whatever he gives him and whatever he can possibly use. And this idea of him being the successor of All Might, it's an amazing thing, and he's so excited about it. In which, of course, All Might would say, you know what? Then that's it. Then you are my successor. And of course, they're going to train at Dagobah Beach. And that's exactly what happens. Izuku blows through the training though, like super quickly. Cleaning up the beach is no problem for this Izuku, because he is extremely strong already, just physically. And on top of that, he's going to be extremely powerful with One for All because of his martial arts skills. So they would clean up the beach in record time, maybe 1 to 2 months. And then Izuku would gain the power of One for All for the last 8 months to train with. Izuku, of course, will try to thread in some study time because, let's be honest, he has a hard time doing that. but he still threads in some study time and trains with One for All, and he would learn pretty quickly that he could basically spread One for All throughout his entire body. And he would learn that he can actually kind of crank it up a certain amount, and he doesn't have to use 100% of his power all the time. I mean, it's the same concept that he learned in martial arts, and a concept that he's really known for a long time, and all of these things are going to help him massively in training for One for All. So for 8 months straight, he trains and works and trains and studies and over again like clockwork, and he keeps working hard and working harder at it, and eventually he would get One for All up to at least 30 to 35%. Yeah, he would be that powerful, because Izuku would be threading or kind of maintaining One for All throughout his entire body at 35%, and he believes that he could even crank it up quite a bit higher, but 35% is kind of the perfect thing for him to kind of just sit in, to him to, like, you know, can walk around and relax at, in which All Might thinks this is a pretty interesting idea. From the very beginning of his training, Izuku would use One for All at a really low rate, even though he knew he could push his body even further. He would basically train with One for All at about 5%. He would turn it up to 5%, even though he could probably get up to 15 at that point, and he would just sit in One for All at 5%. Literally would sit in it at 5%. So he would walk around, he would do studies, he would do this or do that at 5%, because he wanted full control over it, and also wanted his body to adjust to the power. And that's exactly what his body did. It adjusted massively, and it allows him now to walk around at 35% without feeling even a single strain of damage. It's as if he's just in his normal state and his normal kind of fighting state. Now, he can crank this thing up to probably like 70% with a ton of strain, but in terms of just walking around as if he's just doing his studies, or he can sleep at 35%. That is what Izuku is able to do. And he would even quickly talk to All Might about the kind of past heritage, in a way, of what One for All once was. And this heritage of One for All, he would tell him, hey, what are the other quirks that the other users had? He knows All Might is quirkless, but what about Nana Shimura? What about these other people that possibly had it, and which All Might doesn't really know? He knows Nana Shimura's, but he doesn't really know anybody else. In which Izuku says that if One for All is passed down and it continues to stack stronger and stronger quirks, and then on top of that, it probably carries on the other quirks as well. In which he tells All Might this, and All Might thinks this is a pretty shocking discovery, and tells him that, well, after the UA entrance exam, he'll give him more information about the other quirks of the other people. But for now, remember that Nana Shimura has a float-like quirk, in which it kind of allowed her to fly in a way. In which Izuku thinks, oh, okay, I mean that's pretty damn cool, and he thinks maybe one day he'll be able to actually utilize it. He just probably can't do it just right now, but it is something to keep in mind. It might be laying dormant within his body. He has really no clue, but this would eventually lead them to the UA entrance exam, which the studying and also the non-practical or the written portion of this exam would be the hardest thing for Izuku. I'm not gonna lie, it would be difficult. Izuku would pass it, but it wouldn't be like with some crazy flying colors. But when he would get into the actual practical exam, aka destroying robots, oh, he would have a field day. He would be with a wide grin on his face, smiling from ear to ear, just sprinting through the city, smashing robot after robot after robot after robot. He would have the time of his life, and he would be just destroying them, and everybody would be thinking, whoa, this kid is really good, like really strong and really good. Like, how is he able to do this? This is kind of crazy. The way he's literally like kicking through the robots, punching through them, not a single scratch on his body. He would obliterate so many robots that he would have so many points, and a lot of people would lack points because of this specifically. And there would be some redo kind of tests, because Izuku would take out about 95% of the robots. So they would have to have a bit of a redo test, or kind of decide, hey, let's give these people a chance to show a little bit more by kind of bringing in some more robots when this kid leaves. and they would eventually tell them all that. But first, they would send out the 0-point robot because they would be interested. Hey, how do you think Izuku is gonna fare against the 0-point robot? That's their question. And Aizawa himself is honestly thinking about this too. He wants to know, is this kid that strong? Is he like strong, like All Might strong possibly? He wants to know. And Izuku sees this 0-point robot, and let's just say this. He does want to save Ochaku Araka, in which he does. Very swiftly, very gracefully, and so on. But after he saves her, he would put her down, get her to safety, and basically be like, all right, now it's time to fight the big robot. And he would jump at the robot and begin trying to like take it out. And at 35% of One For All, he definitely would be able to, especially with the control and power throughout his whole body. So he can put really his whole punch into it. And that's the difference, right? Like, he's not using 100%, but he's not just using 100% or he's not just using all his power in one arm. He knows how to properly punch. So when he uses 35% of One For All, he punches with his entire body. He flips his hips, he turns his punch over, all of it. Izuku in the normal canon didn't really do all that. He just punched like All Might. Boom, right? Just one foul swoop, just all arm punch type of thing. And this Izuku, he knows how to punch in a very technical sense. Very, very good. And he'd be able to wear down the robot at 35%, and eventually he would take down the robot as it basically goes down to one knee, and he can kick it, and it goes tumbling over and crashing into a building. Izuku would be on top of the robot cheering and thinking that was really freaking fun. Like, yes, fighting actual people, like sparring and stuff like that, is of course really fun and really interesting because he gets to learn new techniques and stuff like that. But damn, he hasn't fought anything that large. Like, that thing was huge. It was a massive robot, and he never knew he could fight something that big, and he just did. And it was so freaking awesome. And he would just head back, and everybody would be shocked to see what he was able to do. And eventually he would tell or ask Ochako if she's all right and if she's good now. In which, of course, she's like, yeah, I'm completely fine. I don't understand how you were able to do that. In which Izuku's like, do what? Like, what are you talking about? In which everybody's standing there thinking like, oh yeah, this kid, like, yeah, he's really strong, but he's a little bit dumb, right? He's a little bit coy. But at the same time, it's not like he's a complete idiot. He just really wasn't even thinking about the idea of other people being impressed by his show of power when he defeated the 0-point robot, which he really should have been because it was pretty damn impressive. Now, this would lead him to getting into UA. He wouldn't actually get number 1 because of his written test scores. His written test scores aren't really that good, and he kind of lacks in that department. And even with the rescue points, it would still only put him in the top 3. And it's kind of funny to think about that because he basically got like nothing, like no extra points from the written portion, and he basically just skated by in terms of the written portion. So he's definitely going to have to work on that as they progress through this time. Now, Izuku would get that letter from UA, hearing that he's got in, being that he is top 3, being that he's literally 3rd, and he would then hear that he's in class 1A, which would be awesome as heck, in which he would get into the classroom, and guess who he would see? Katsuki Bakugo, in which he's like, best buddy. And immediately Bakugo would just be so pissed because how did you get in here? Like, seriously? But secondly, this guy is going to be messing with Bakugo heavily, calling him, like, oh yeah, that's my best friend right there, like this and that, even though Bakugo absolutely despises him, in which of course is kind of stupid pretenses because he shouldn't actually despise Izuku. He's kind of just an idiot because he does. But still, he does mess with Bakugo a little bit, and eventually Aizawa would enter, telling them to quiet down, or basically shut up, and that they're going to be actually doing a quirk assessment, which this right here is going to be really fun to watch, because Izuku watches, Bakugo throw the ball, and he's like, oh, that was really impressive, Bakugo. You did a really good job, best buddy. And then eventually it would be his turn up, and of course this would be after the speech of whoever gets last is going to be expelled. So Izuku would just chuck this thing, and it would go spiraling and flying extremely far. Now, he would crank up his power just briefly in that moment and then go back down to his normal strength. So he would go up to 70%, launch it basically almost into space, and then he would kind of power back down. Just like, you know, in that moment, he cranked up his power so that he wouldn't have too much strain on his body. Because this version of Izuku, he's not too beat up in terms of his body, and he continues to work on getting stronger and stronger in terms of his potential with One For All. In every single aspect of this quirk assessment, though, he would pass with flying colors. From the ball throw to the side steps to the speed or the race, and also the grip strength. He would be better at it than literally everybody. For the most part. Because he definitely wouldn't be number one in the ball throw, but he would be basically number one in almost every single other category. And eventually leads to him getting number one in the quirk assessment, which Aizawa would laugh at, because he would be thinking, wow, it seems like their grading scale is a little out of the ordinary, because it seems like our actual number one student didn't get number one, in which other people are even higher than Bakugo as well, which this would frustrate Bakugo too. He'd be absolutely pissed about it and thinking that he just wants any chance to get his hands on this dumb Izuku guy, and he wants to get his hands on Deku, and he's gonna show him what he's truly all about, and show him that he really is weak. And we all know Bakugo's gonna get that chance, but just because you get the chance and just because you get what you're asking for doesn't mean you should actually want it, because eventually they would, or for the in the next couple days, they would finally have a chance at doing a bit of more training. And that would be with even All Might himself. All Might would say that they're going to do heroes versus villains, in which it would be Izuku Midoriya and Ochaku Araka as the heroes, and Tenya Ida and Bakugo as the villains. Villains will protect the bomb, heroes will try to seize the bomb, and whoever basically, or if the heroes get it within 5 minutes, they win. If the villains survive for those 5 minutes or capture the heroes, then it is completely and utterly over. In which Bakugo's thinking, I'm going to beat the absolute heck out of Izuku Midoriya, or Deku, because that's what he would call him. And Izuku's thinking, wow, this is pretty cool. I mean, we get a chance at trying to actually do a hero scenario, but damn, he really just wants to fight. He just wants to take on Bakugo, because Bakugo seemed really passionate about beating him up. So maybe Bakugo has something up his sleeve. Izuku is extremely excited to see, but when he would enter with Ochako, well, Bakugo would go head first, charging at Izuku almost immediately. Izuku would tell Ochako to go find the bomb, that he'll handle this, in which Bakugo would throw a steep overhand, and as he throws it, one punch to the gut, boom. And immediately Izuku would slam him on the ground and just knock him out instantly, covering him in capture tape, in which he would shake his head. Damn, that's kind of disappointing, but hey, at least I got the job done. In which he would immediately start racing up the stairs, finding Ochako right next to the room where the bomb is. Izuku would speed blitz Tenya Ida, and they would begin fighting, but in terms of technique and in terms of skill, I mean, it's not even close. Yes, Tenya is pretty fast, but honestly, he opened up the room like it was some mat in martial arts or some dojo mat, and basically made it so it was a one-on-one fight between him and Izuku. And Izuku made quick work of both of them, tapping onto the bomb, as both him and Ochako would basically touch the bomb together, in which it would be over. Everybody be watching thinking like, whoa, this is something they never expected. A lot of them got their quirks and were thinking to themselves like, oh, I don't need to do anything. Like, I could just, just learn my quirk. I can be powerful like this or like that. But no. Izuku doesn't think like that. He was thinking, I might be quirkless, and yes, he isn't now. He's got a quirk now, but he's like, I might be quirkless, but I'm going to give it my absolute all. I'm going to train hard. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to stress my body to its absolute limit, and I'm going to prepare myself, because I want to be a hero. I want to be a fighter, and I want to be even greater than All Might. And that is the mindset that Izuku has always gone through and always gone with. He's always striving to be better, always striving to be basically at the top and always striving to seek out an even greater challenge. And well, Izuku will get that challenge sooner than you would expect, because when they would go to the USJ and they would go to have a bit of training in a rescue-like facility, villains would invade, and the League of Villains would bring something that would challenge Izuku Midoriya to a level he never even expected, but he's destined and ready for the challenge, and with a smile on his face, he's ready for it all. But before we dive into that, this is where we're going to end What If Deku Had Goku's Mindset Part 1. Izuku Midoriya is ready. He's ready to finally train at the USJ and actually get some rescue-like techniques down pat. Because he's thinking to himself that there's a lot more than just, fighting and stuff like that in terms of being a hero. He still needs to figure out and learn how to save people to the highest degree. And he just has to be a better kind of rescue-like hero to be the best hero he can possibly be. Yes, he is more interested in having a good fight and a good little scrap, but he knows that if he wants to be a hero, a big part of it is rescuing people to, or as much as possible, so this is going to help him develop. But he doesn't have a normal time in this scenario, because the USJ would be flooded with villains faster than you could possibly imagine. The USJ would be flooded with many villains. And it seems like portals would open up and basically would put him in a situation where he actually isn't necessarily prepared for what's to come. But he sees all of these villains, all of these people out there, and basically trying to hurt other students, and he thinks to himself that he's gonna jump in there with Aizawa and he's gonna fight and beat them all down. And that's what he does. He jumps in there with Aizawa with about 35% of One For All and begins to actually help mow down all of the minor villains that are currently there. But after all of them are defeated, he looks to his side to see Aizawa standing right there, basically telling him to get back, that he needs to get out of here because, well, he can't be fighting alongside him, that he's not an official hero just yet, that he has responsibilities. He has to be safe. That is what the number one goal is for the students. They need to be safe. But as he's saying this, Aizawa would actually take his eyes off the fight. And, well, the Nomu would come charging forward and is about to punch him in the face. But Izuku would jump in the way, blocking the shot for the most part, like blocking the strike, and it basically sends him flying backwards. As it sends him flying backwards, he would feel his arms cracking, as if the punch is something he's never felt before in his life. The Nomu's power is overwhelming. Izuku even cranks his One For All up as much as he possibly can to about 75%. But as he starts fighting the Nomu, he starts realizing something. That the Nomu is extremely powerful and extremely durable. He's keeping up with it to an extent, but he's never felt something like this before. There's a small hint of excitement underneath his skin, but at the same time, there's a little bit of fear. He feels as if this thing is stronger than anything he's ever even faced, and it might be that serious. He might truly need help. He tries to go basically blow for blow with the Nomu, trying to use his techniques, but the Nomu feels so fast. It feels so strong. He doesn't understand. How is it able to do this? How is it able to be this powerful? In which Izuku tries his best to basically keep up with 75% of One For All. And yes, he does do a little bit of damage to the Nomu, but he doesn't have that full-on control to the point where he feels okay with letting loose all of his strength at 75% at least, and he feels as if the initial damage he took from blocking the first Nomu's attack basically put him at a massive disadvantage. But he doesn't even know at full strength if he'd be able to go 1-for-1 with the Nomu. Not this one. This one's so different. His durability seems to be on a totally different level, and its strength feels like something that he would only feel from somebody like All Might. That has to be the explanation. This thing, it must be here to kill him. It must be here to kill All Might. That's the only thing that makes sense. He goes and he continues to try and push himself, continues to try to basically keep up with the Nomu, and he's doing work, but the Nomu's regeneration, its kind of durability, all these various quirks that are lifting him up and helping him is making this extremely hard for him to keep up, truly. Izuku would eventually get a small opening, but the small opening would actually be when Shigaraki would try to join the fight, putting his hand through a portal to grab Izuku. But Izuku would grab his hand and make sure that it doesn't touch him, and he would yank him through the portal. He would then throw him at the Nomu as the Nomu's punching or about to punch Izuku, and Shigaraki would take the punch instead. Izuku would then clash with the Nomu once again until he hears the sound he was waiting for, and that's the arrival of All Might. All Might would then dive in and would smash the Nomu dead in the face, straight in the face, and they begin to brawl as well. And All Might has the help of Izuku to an extent, but Izuku is trying his best to even stay around, but it's extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. He was not prepared for something like this. He did not think this thing would this thing would be this strong, and he had no idea a creature this strong would exist, and he felt like he was on top of the food chain. He felt like he was going to be the strongest, and it wasn't even going to be close. But obviously, he's fallen behind on what he truly believes to what matters, and that is getting stronger and progressing day in and day out. He thought his progression was plenty, that he understood his power enough, but it seems like he hasn't been taking things as seriously as he should, because this right here is proof that there's always a bigger fish. There's always a stronger person, and Izuku knows now that he needs to excel at every moment. It doesn't matter if the person is weak, strong, mild, a normal human being, quirkless, anything. Every single person needs to be treated with the same awareness, needs to be treated like they could be his last fight. And Izuku now understands this, and as he helps All Might clash with the Nomu once again, and finally they would then knock out the Nomu, putting it down for good. They would look to see Shigaraki still on the ground, and would also see Kurogiri basically trying his best to get to Shigaraki. And yes, they do try and stop him, but eventually Shigaraki and Kurogiri would escape, but they would assume that this won't be the last time they will be seeing them, because sooner rather than later, they will definitely be running into them again and have to deal with whatever's to come in the near future. In which Izuku is excited for that fight once again, but he knows now that the excitement needs to be tempered with awareness, and now that he knows this, he knows that he can't be as stupid as he once was. He can't be as lenient and coy and as kind of as loose as he once was to the idea that anything could truly happen. He needs to realize this, and he definitely does in this scenario now. Izuku would then keep progressing. Throughout this time, they would have a couple days off, but all he would do is train and train and train some more, learning about new techniques, learning about new things that he could possibly get into, and on top of that, learning about the other quirks that lay within him possibly, and that quirks he could possibly use, in which he learns of one of the users that actually utilized something known as Blackwhip, and then another user obviously having float being that of Nana Shimura. And there's many other quirks that All Might is basically telling him about, but really, there is no guarantee that these will even show up. Izuku doesn't know and doesn't really necessarily care if they do show up or not, but he wants to be prepared, you could say. He wants to be ready just in case they do, because he wants to excel to a degree that nobody else has ever seen. So all the training he does is for the up-and-coming UA Sports Festival, and he is ready for this UA Sports Festival, ready beyond all measure, because he wants to show to everybody, every single person, every single agency, that he is at a totally different level and that he's going to continuously get better and better and better. And he'll show every single person out there that he will be that next person at the very top of the heap. And that's exactly what he does. For 4 days, he trains before the UA Sports Festival, excelling his one for all even to a higher degree. Initially, he was doing it for the long game. Kind of, hey, let's sit in 35% and get used to it. But now he's doing it around the clock no matter what. 40%, 45%. Even in 4 days of training, hard training, he gets all the way up to 50% at a natural state, in which he feels that this might even be as strong as someone like All Might, but this natural state is perfect because he won't hurt himself at all when utilizing it. And he continues to crank it up more and more. Even in the UA Sports Festival, he takes things very seriously. Don't get me wrong, he still enjoys the thrill of the fight. He still enjoys the UA Sports Festival, but he's going to make sure that things go proper in this scenario. And at 50% of One For All, he begins the obstacle course race after Midnight does her whole spiel, and he just blitzes past everybody. Actually, to the point where he feels like he's just gliding, as if he's trying to channel this quirk by the name of Float, but he doesn't know if he's really doing it. He's not quite sure, but he can feel that something is showing up, that something is revealing itself, that he'll eventually be able to utilize it, just not right now, not to its fullest extent. And this would lead him to obviously being first in the obstacle course race, in which, of course, this would lead them into the cavalry battle, which the cavalry battle is a very simple one. Izuku staying locked in entirely, getting the help of other people like Ochaku Araka, Tokiyami, Meihatsume, and they would all work together. And they would work together flawlessly because Izuku and everybody would pass on as the #1 team for that next portion of the UA Sports Festival. They would have to deal with people like Katsuki Bakugo and people like Shoto Todoroki, but they're not going to have to worry too heavily about them because they're handled with relative ease. Izuku is just completely locked in, and even Bakugo is shocked to see how much Izuku is taking this seriously. He's not necessarily like serious in terms of not smiling at all because he is enjoying his time, but he is not making any movements that are kind of unneeded. He is locked in and ready for everything, and he knows that he needs to take every single person seriously. At one point, he was feeling that he was stronger and better than everyone here, that nobody would give him a challenge. But now he knows that he needs to be ready for everything, because at the end of the day, there might always be someone stronger waiting for you to fall just a little bit short, or someone who is weaker than you might just catch you off guard to the point where you get well put away forever. So Izuku continues to work hard and stay paced to what he is intending on doing, and eventually his first fight would come up, and his first fight would be against Hitoshi Shinso. Shinso would be an interesting opponent because Shinso would show that he has this power or this quirk that is a lot different than anything he's ever seen. This quirk would be a mind or brainwashing like quirk. And Izuku would actually get caught off by this because he would basically be talking smack to him and saying this or that. And initially Izuku wasn't going to say a word, but then eventually it would lead him to kind of responding in a way that he wasn't expecting. And eventually he would feel that his whole body was just completely under control of Shinso. But as he does this, he would enter a dreamlike state, a dreamscape, you could even say. And he begins to look around and he sees all of these people, his mouth completely covered, unable to actually speak. But there's one person that stands right in front of him, and that, well, is Nana Shimura. She stands in front of him and says that he's already made all of them so proud, even if some of them wouldn't admit it. But he is the perfect successor for what this truly is. He is the perfect person, someone with an undeniable work ethic, and somebody who knows the value of taking every single situation seriously and enjoying the time that he has while fighting, enjoying the time that he has while being in the moment. Nana Shimura would tell him that a lot of them would disagree with the enjoyment of a fight, but she knows that you need to have a sense of duty, but also a sense of fun. And she knows that there needs to be a fine line between it all, and a fine line that he has, in which she says that she's proud of the kid and wishes that she could be there to watch him grow and prosper. But for now, this will be good enough. She'll be watching, and she wishes him the best. And as she is saying this, he would jump right back into his body, and he would be floating right above the area that was going to be the out of bounds, floating and not touching the ground. And everybody's shocked. How did he do that? How is he propelling himself above the ground? How did he stop himself from getting eliminated? In which Izuku would look back and immediately dash and dart toward Hitoshi Shinso and knock him out of the ring. Then after the fact helps him up and says that he did really well, that he was very impressive and his quirk was very impressive as well. But he has a mission to accomplish, and he has a UA Sports Festival to win, in which Izuku would head back, prepare for his next match, and his next match would be Shoto Todoroki, in which when he would utilize his ice quirk over and over again, Izuku would show that there is no really chance for Shoto to actually win this fight. It seems like Shoto is running out of options. It eventually gets to the point where he's like completely depleted, exhausted, and unable to use his ice to the degree that he was before. In which Izuku questions, why is he not using his fire side? Why is he not using that combination? Why is he not using his full strength? In which Izuku questions him over and over again, and eventually Shoto says there's no way he's going to use his father's quirk, in which Izuku says that that is his quirk. That is his power, and he needs to understand that. He needs to use everything in his arsenal, and on top of that, he doesn't see this as even a win if Shoto doesn't truly use everything he possibly can to defeat him. That is truly disappointing. That it's truly going to diminish what the UA Sports Festival is supposed to be. He tells Shoto to use his power, use the power that was gifted to him, use the power that was granted to him. Because these fights, the ones he's had before, the ones that felt easy, they won't always be easy. Someday he'll run into somebody far stronger than him, run into somebody that is going to kill him and come to end his life, and he's going to have to be prepared to basically save himself, and he has to devoid himself of all of these selfish kind of motives and or this idea that he doesn't need his father's help, so that means he doesn't need his quirk. Izuku would then convince him, and Todoroki would begin using his fire side, helping him in the fight drastically. But Izuku would collapse the distance that Todoroki has made in terms of power, and he would begin his onslaught, taking him as serious as possible. And Izuku's technique would just override all of the kind of progress that Todoroki has made, leading to him getting kicked out of the ring and Izuku standing tall once again. At about 60% of One For All, now adapting even further, feeling that the One For All that he's been utilizing continues to evolve and continues to peak out in power, he now understands. He now gets it. He needs to take everything seriously, at least to an extent, and not allow those that stand in front of him to just, do their thing casually, and never let your guard down to an extent, in which Izuku has a hard time with that, specifically letting his guard down. But luckily these aren't villains, and he knows when to hold back and when not to hold back. But eventually he would have his next fight, which would be Tenya Ida, but it would be a simple fight. And it's an odd one because he feels that Tenya is kind of in a headspace somewhere else. Tenya's really not thinking about the fight that they're currently in, and Tenya's kind of everywhere. And it's kind of throwing Izuku off, because at the end of the day, why is he acting this way? Why is he kind of approaching the fight this way? It seems like Tenya's not in a good headspace, and he wonders what's wrong with him, and he wonders if everything is okay with him, but he'll have to keep kind of an eye on him, because he doesn't want the guy to fall down the wrong path and get hurt in some sort of way. so he'll keep his eyes open for him. But after the defeat of Tenya, Izuku would finally get his chance to take on Katsuki Bakugo in the finals, in the final 1 versus 1, to prove who the very strongest is. Izuku would go head to head with his best buddy. Now, of course, Bakugo doesn't really see him as his best buddy, but Izuku would basically tell him that it's a pleasure to fight someone like him in the finals, especially because he does see him as one of his best friends. In which, of course, Bakugo says that he doesn't care if they're friends, and frankly, he doesn't like him at all, and he's going to wipe that smile off of his face. In which Izuku would shake his head and shrug, saying that whatever you say, whatever you got going on, he wishes him the best. But he goes to fist bump him, and Bakugo would just deny him, slapping his hand away, and everybody would boo. Izuku would line up and get ready, and as he prepares for one final shot. That's all he prepares for, one singular blow. And as he waits for Bakugo to move, as the kind of person tells them that they're allowed to begin, Izuku would watch as Bakugo would charge forward, and instead of going for the same move he did before, he would fake it, leaving Bakugo wide open, landing a kick straight to his gut, and then he would smash him with a double-handed downward fist, and would punch him directly out of the ring. And Bakugo would try to recover, but as he does, he would just barely land outside the ring, and he would be called on a ring out, in which Bakugo would be furious, asking why he doesn't want to fight him, why he doesn't want to truly fight him, why would he use the idea of a ring out to take him down, that he wouldn't be able to take him down otherwise. In which Izuku shakes his head and says that he finished the fight the way it was supposed to be finished, and that's it. That's the end of the line. Izuku defeated Bakugo, but Bakugo would have to be restrained because he was losing it. He was pissed, freaking out and screaming and yelling and all this BS, and he would be absolutely heated about it, in which Izuku just kind of shrugs it away, thinking that there's really nothing he can say to Bakugo to make him feel a different way, in which Izuku is only worried about one thing, and that is to continue on with his progression, continue on with what he's been doing, and which is exactly what he's up for, because Izuku would get quite a bit of offers for internships, but there was one that he would decide to go to, and that was with Gran Torino. Gran Torino would help him get over a ton of his flaws in terms of fighting, a ton of the ideas and all of these other kind of inconsistencies that are with his, not only his fighting style, but also his way of thinking. Gran Torino would be a great leader for, or mentor for, Izuku, someone that would be a lot better than someone like All Might, in which eventually it leads them to kind of going on a bit of a patrol. And Gran Torino teaches him even greater ways of utilizing One for All to its fullest extent, allowing him to truly creep up on utilizing 70% or even kind of towards 80% of One for All with relative ease, not even worrying about kind of the strain and feeling natural in it all. But eventually he would go on that patrol in Hosu City, and that patrol would change everything, because he would come across something that would truly scare him, because he would run across Tenya Ida about to fight the hero killer. He would basically leave Gran Torino, and he would tell Tenya that this is not the fight that he wants, that he needs to think about this, think really clearly, because he needs to really understand what he's doing right now. In which Stain would say that the kid is trying to get himself killed, and frankly he's doing society a favor by getting rid of him, because he's obviously not a true hero. In which Izuku would tell him to quiet down, that he's just a villain, that he's trying to speak to his friend right now, that he's trying to speak to a future hero in this society. But Stain would say that if he feels that way, then he's far from the hero that he could be, because he would understand that this kid is not a hero. Stain would dash forward trying to strike down Tenya, but Izuku would immediately jump in the way, parrying the sword and then kicking Stain in the stomach, telling Tenya to get out of here and that he'll handle this guy. Stain would smirk, saying that the kid has some moves and it's obvious that he's very and highly skilled in martial arts, but it doesn't mean he can defeat him. Izuku tells him that he's been training with people that are basically the mentor of even All Might himself, and he's going to show everybody and show even himself that he can protect as many people as possible. Stain would stand there and dash at Izuku. They would clash, but Izuku would have the strength upper hand and would be extremely skilled in martial arts to the point where he can find openings in Stain's movements. He would begin disarming Stain slowly but surely, but the real kicker is his ability to basically fly. His ability to fly allows him to attack Stain in different directions that Stain isn't ready for, and as Stain is basically on his last weapon, he would finally find his opening, about to strike down Izuku, but as he does, Izuku would put out his hand, and as he puts out his hand, these black-like tendrils would surround the sword, covering it up entirely and throwing it to the side. Izuku realizes that he just unlocked another quirk known as Blackwhip. He doesn't know how he's using it and how it happened, but now that he's disarmed Stain, it's just a hand-to-hand combat fight, and he kicks him toward the wall as Stain would recover, but then would get blasted by a large chunk of ice, and then fire would come in as well, blasting him too. Izuku would find the opening to knock out Stain, chopping him in the back of the neck extremely hard, knocking him out cold. He turns to see Todoroki there to help, and Todoroki smirks and says that it seems like that he needed a little bit of help to make sure the guy stayed down, covering Stain in ice and making sure that he can't move until the other heroes arrive. Izuku would give a nice firm handshake to Todoroki, and they would give a bit of a bro hug, you know what I'm saying? And he would be extremely happy to see him, saying that he might have been able to handle that on his own, but it's better safe than sorry, and he's glad that they were able to take him down before he hurts anyone else. In which Endeavor and many others would eventually arrive, grabbing Stain, tying him up, and basically taking the credit for the capture of Stain, because obviously the young heroes aren't allowed necessarily to actually defeat a villain and or hurt a villain, and it's illegal without a license. So that's what happened. Izuku would have to give up the credit, which, to be honest, Izuku doesn't really care about the credit. He doesn't really mind. He just minds that everybody is safe and that he got a good fight out of it, in which a good fight is definitely something that he's excited about, especially with an up-and-coming exam. And yes, the final exam is coming up, and it does suck because the written portion is not a fun thing for him, but luckily he has friends like Shoto Todoroki, Momo Yaoyorozu, and many others to kind of help him out. So they basically do kind of a training / study session where Izuku would be training his techniques and doing different martial arts skills while they would study him up. And it actually helps him a lot. If he trains, fighting while doing flashcards and stuff like that, it helps him learn and soak in things really quickly. And it allows him to really help get his kind of studies up, and allows him to have actually a good grade on the final exam, or the written portion of the final exam, because the true final exam, the practical portion of that exam, would be coming up very soon, and his portion would actually be facing off with one of the teachers, which is pretty interesting. Everybody faces off with a different teacher. Aizawa would face off against Todoroki and Momo, and obviously many others would do the same with different teachers, but who is he facing off with? Who is Izuku going head to head with? Well, he knows that he's partnered with Bakugo, which that is obviously irritating because, well, Bakugo just absolutely hates him for no reason. Even though, Izuku sees them as best buddies, of course. He even calls them this, saying that it's going to be fun going 2 versus 1 against one of the teachers with his best buddy. And that it's going to be a good fight. It's going to be a fun fight. It's going to be a good learning experience. In which Bakugo would tell him to shut his mouth and that he's just an idiot loser and not to talk to him. And which he doesn't care about no plan. He doesn't care about no strategy. He doesn't care about any of that. And which Izuku would just shrug his shoulders and say, have it your way, whatever you think. in which Izuku would wonder who the teacher they'll be going against is, in which Aizawa would smirk and point to the sky as All Might would come flying, or basically slamming down, and he would say that he is here, in which All Might would then say that he is also going to be their opponent, in which Izuku's smile would widen and he would be excited, facing off with All Might. Yes, this is something that he's truly dreamed about, and he even has his best buddy to fight alongside him, in which immediately Bakugo tells him to shut his mouth, in which Izuku shrugs his shoulders and says that nonetheless it'll be a good time, but also he's going to make sure that he can take down All Might, in which All Might says that he's going to give him a run for his money, and he doesn't care how much he's progressed, he's going to make sure to not let him off easy, in which Izuku would nod and smile as the fight between Katsuki Bakugo, Izuku Midoriya, and All Might would be about to begin. But that is where we're going to end part 2 of What If Deku Had Goku's Mindset. Izuku Midoriya and Katsuki Bakugo are about to take on their mentor, All Might. And this fight right here is something that makes Izuku feel extremely excited. He had that fight with the Nomu and felt that he was extremely tested and he was overconfident going into it, allowing himself to get hurt in a way that he really shouldn't have. He may think that he's powerful, he may think that he's stronger than everyone else, but he needs to understand that progression is progression, and that's something Izuku now understands a lot more than ever before. And going into this fight against All Might, he would then try his best to basically work with Bakugo. But the thing is, Bakugo doesn't want to work with him. Bakugo is like pulling out hair, and he continues to kind of ignore Izuku. Everything he says, Izuku says to approach the fight this way, and Bakugo does the exact opposite. Izuku does then realize that he needs to truly strategize on the behalf of basically thinking that Bakugo is going to hold him back. And that's a messed up way of thinking about it, but that's the truth. Bakugo continues to kind of pull the opposite way when Izuku tries to make things more doable and make things better in their favor. And, well, let's just say Izuku is fully prepared to take down All Might himself. And he would get this chance. He would hands down get this chance because Izuku would go heads up with All Might and he would be standing right in front of him ready for a fight. Izuku would line up a punch and throw it directly at All Might, and then kind of move out of the way and look for an uppercut. As he looks for this uppercut, All Might tries to basically get out of the way and dodge it, but Izuku's speed is pretty freaking damn impressive. And on top of that, with float, he's basically able to keep up with All Might in terms of just like any defensive responsibility that All Might tries to do. All Might would go on the offensive though pretty quickly, actually quicker than you could possibly imagine. And Izuku would immediately counter. And this is something that All Might doesn't understand just yet, and not to the degree he really should, but he would get countered and countered and countered again, and Izuku would be using a high level of One For All, closer to 75% at a very natural state. And he is, let's be honest, a lot stronger than All Might at this point. And maybe even stronger or close to the strength of someone like All Might in his prime. Now, he could be even beyond that, but we're not 100% sure because we're not in his prime anymore. He's not in his prime anymore. But Izuku is basically picking All Might apart, making it look extremely easy. All Might relies heavily on his raw strength, and Izuku is very defensively responsible in terms of trying to make sure that he doesn't get hurt in the long run, and he begins to absolutely put on a clinic. Izuku continues to show off the power that he has, but he's not showing it off because he's, wants to have everybody in shock and awe and make All Might look bad. No. He's trying to be responsible and not allow All Might to actually lay a crucial blow on him. This would lead to Bakugo exploding an explosion on All Might as well, and Bakugo is actually beginning to help Izuku. Izuku would overwhelm All Might with his volume of punches, and eventually All Might would slow down massively. But he would look for one solid punch to send Izuku flying, and as he does throw that punch, Izuku would wrap him in Blackwhip and would then land a kick straight to his jaw, launching All Might toward a building. Izuku would then tell Bakugo that they should just escape now, that he has no intention of continuing this fight, because in all reality, he doesn't know if he can, truly knock out All Might for sure. He might have sent him flying toward a building, but it doesn't mean he's out cold. All Might is extremely durable, and we've seen on multiple occasions that he'll do whatever it takes to basically survive certain scenarios. So Izuku would then throw Blackwhip out, slinging himself away, as Bakugo would follow and they would escape. Of course, this would lead to All Might being actually decently injured. Nothing insane, nothing that he can't heal off or anything like that. But Izuku did absolutely hurt All Might during this fight. But even with that said, he didn't actually hit his really bad wound. Izuku avoided it entirely, not wanting to hurt All Might more than he truly had to. But this is where All Might realizes that this Izuku Midoriya, his successor, he doesn't need his help anymore. He doesn't need All Might to basically guide him anymore. He doesn't need All Might to really protect him anymore. And All Might realizes that he really did pick the perfect person to be his successor. And he's already showing signs of being far stronger than him and far stronger than many heroes that even exist to this day. In which Izuku continues his training, and this training would continue as they would go to the forest training camp. The forest training camp would be pretty interesting, but Izuku would have no issues fighting off these Earth-like monsters that the Wild Wild Pussycats would sick them with, as they would chuck them, off the mountain. But of course, he wouldn't even land hard on the ground, because he does have literally a quirk that allows him to just float and do stuff along those lines. Now, of course, this would lead to some basic training. Just training, working out, and just trying to get stronger. Izuku's goal throughout this time is to get to 100% of One For All. Yes, it is a kind of a hard thing to deal with, because the jump between 75 to 80 to 85 to 90, all of these things, as you get higher and higher, it gets a lot more difficult to really maintain his body. But eventually he would get a little bit higher. This is where he would start to plateau just a little bit, getting to about 80%, hoping that he can eventually get to 100%, but his body is just not ready for it just yet. Just not yet. And he continues to work hard, and trying to expand his strength and also his knowledge of fighting. Even working with Aizawa a little bit on kind of different ways he could utilize Blackwhip and different ways he could actually utilize his fighting styles, which of course is massively beneficial for Izuku Midoriya, especially because his hand-to-hand combat skills are at a very, very, very high level already, and adding Aizawa's kind of input and fighting strategies will always be beneficial. Same thing with working with someone by the name of Tiger, who is part of the Wild Wild Pussycats. Now, this would eventually lead up to a villain invasion, in which the villain invasion is directed toward Bakugo. They're trying to actually capture Bakugo, believing that he has a chance at swaying to the villain's side, and he would be a powerful recruit in the long run. But of course, Bakugo isn't messing around here, and he does hurt quite a bit of these villains that are trying to basically get him. But Izuku is currently dealing with his own issue, as he goes to see what is happening with Koda and going to see if he's safe and secure. He runs onto the mountain and he sees that Muscular is currently there, threatening the child, and Izuku does not take this lightly. He makes a very, very clear statement that he should leave now, that if he wants to, just leave them alone, and he wants to get out of here without a scratch, he better just leave right now and surrender himself later. But Muscular would say that he's heard that this kid is pretty damn strong, and he wants to see what he's all about. In which Izuku shakes his head and says that if he wants to see how powerful he is, then he should come now. He should fight and get ready, because he's going to get a beating. In which Izuku is dead serious this time around, taking on this kind of very protective mindset, because this is somebody who is a child, somebody who Izuku is, laughably fond of, and he's just a kid. And he knows that this kid had no way of protecting himself, and he's going to show Muscular the error of his ways, in which he lines up to fight him, and Muscular tries to throw a punch, but he would duck under it, or Izuku would duck under it, landing a clean punch to his stomach as he would work the body and then go upstairs as he kicks him right in the head. Izuku would immediately go on the offensive, flying at Muscular basically, and he would begin to wrap him in Blackwhip and begins to land crucial blows and punches to his face, stomach, body, and legs, and just in general hitting him all around, leading him to trying to ramp up his own strength, or Muscular trying to ramp up his own strength, but he unfortunately cannot in time to really make it matter. Izuku's already on the offensive so much that Muscular is able to ramp it up, but his strength is so depleted at this point that he's just going to fall to Izuku quicker than you could possibly imagine. And with 80% of One For All and utilizing at such an efficient and high rate, and also having floats and Blackwhip at his disposal, well, he continues to show why he is the future of this, hero society. That he's the future of everything that's going on. And Izuku Midoriya, after defeating Muscular, would help out Kota get back to safety. After he is basically safe, Izuku would help his other classmates, defeating other villains and capturing them as well. But before you know it, there was a portal opening up and they were dragging Bakugo away. Izuku would wrap Shigaraki and Bakugo in Blackwhip and yank them from the portal. Kurogiri is unable to actually reach him once again, and Bakugo would explode Shigaraki on the face with his explosion quirk, and with one foul swoop, he's able to basically subdue Shigaraki and knock him out cold. Kurogiri tries to open a portal to save him, but Izuku refuses to allow him to actually get through that portal, getting away to the point where Kurogiri can't actually get to Shigaraki. Shigaraki would be subdued, and Kurogiri would be out of luck in terms of trying to save Shigaraki. Now, this would lead him to doing a bit of a final kind of gambit for Shigaraki's sake, and that is to bring All For One to this place right now, in which, as he does, Izuku would be standing there in front of All For One, and All For One would tell him that he is a formidable successor for the One For All quirk, but this is where he will fall. He will fall just like the rest of them. He will die just like them all. Every single successor that ever existed for the One For All quirk, he will be with them before you know it. In which Izuku would stand there and he would tell him that he has no idea what he's doing and he will protect his friends at all costs. In which Bakugo would stand next to him and tell him that they're going to stop him and stop this person in his tracks. In which Izuku would dash forward fighting All For One, and you could tell that there is a bit of a strength difference, but All For One thinks that he has the upper hand. But Izuku would dodge black tendrils as he would fly all throughout the air and then eventually land a crucial blow to the jaw of All For One, eventually leading him to tying him up with Blackwhip and then kicking him straight toward the ground once again. Aizawa would be currently in the moment trying to actually get a hold of All Might, trying to get All Might to come to the forest training camp. And as this fight is going on, Bakugo is trying his best to help Izuku as much as possible. All these Nomus and other things are keeping the other students massively occupied, and Bakugo and Izuku are the only ones that are currently not occupied to fight All For One. But Izuku is worried about Bakugo. He's not sure if Bakugo is really going to be able to hang in there with one of the strongest villains ever, and he's worried that he'll have to try and save him if he gets caught off guard, in which his worries would come to fruition because immediately black tendrils would go by Izuku, going toward Bakugo. As he would try and move Bakugo out of the way, he would push him out of the way and get hit and scraped, and also part of his body would get punctured by the black tendrils. Izuku would then grab All For One once again with Blackwhip, telling him that he's going to have to do a lot better than that to kill him, as he would slam his feet into All For One's face, shattering the mask that he has on him. Izuku would begin an onslaught on All For One while he's completely subdued and tied up. Izuku would be angered by the All For One's attack, but on top of that, he would be excited. It's weird. Izuku can feel his body rush with excitement, and he could feel that he is excited and happy that he's fighting someone so powerful. All For One would think he's a psychopath. Why is he smiling? Why is he happy? Why is he going through these kind of states of positivity when he's fighting for his life? In which Izuku tells him that he's not necessarily fighting for his life, but fighting is his life. He would then land one more crucial blow to All Might's stomach, or All For One's stomach, excuse me, and would send him spiraling toward a mountain. And as he's getting basically pushed toward that mountain, All For One would stop in his own tracks, and he would tell him that he's going to power up and store all this power into one singular arm, and he's going to take him out for good. He tells him that the successor of All Might will die here today, in which he would store all this power in his right arm, and he would go to land one singular punch on Izuku, but out of nowhere, Izuku can hear something from the sky, and one thing can be said. Not one word, but one phrase. United States of Smash, landing directly on the face of All For One. Izuku would follow up once again with a kick straight to the gut of him, sending him spiraling toward the ground, and All For One would be defeated, laying there on the ground, out cold entirely, with his successor tied up, captured, and unable to leave. And on top of that, the other heroes were able to actually get a tab on where Kurogiri is, and it seems like they're going to be able to track him pretty damn quickly, because that is the last key to stopping basically what is happening with the League of Villains. And eventually the heroes, after the forest training camp and stuff like that, and obviously the kids moving into the dorms, they would actually find Kurogiri and be able to capture him with the help of Aizawa, and they begin interrogating him and figuring out who he truly is. But that doesn't really affect Izuku, at least at this moment, not in terms of his storyline and his line of what's happening. But what he's preparing for is the Provisional Hero License exam. After defeating All For One and after all of that happening, everything was kind of brought under wraps. No one really talked about it. The news stations didn't catch it, and luckily enough they didn't, because a lot of things would have changed for Izuku, and he wouldn't have been able to be just a normal kid anymore. So Izuku would continue progressing, or kind of progressing with his hero license, or his provisional hero license, in which he would have no trouble at all doing the first portion of it. The first portion would be kind of like tagging people and turning off their lights that they have strapped to their chests, and basically doing that would defeat them, and they only need a couple eliminations, and once they have those couple of eliminations, they would then pass on to the next portion of the exam, which he would do with flying colors, like very easily defeat what he needs to defeat, and this would eventually lead him to the rescue portion of this exam. The rescue portion, on the other hand, though, has a lot of things going for it. Izuku helps with kind of setting up base camp, and then helps with kind of running around and flying around and learning about different people, and bringing it back to base camp, learning of where these people are either in trouble or hurting or kind of need help or in need of help, in which Izuku is able to delegate different jobs to different people, and basically helping others find what they need to find, in which this would be perfect for Izuku. And also what else would be perfect is his potential fight with Gang Orca. Gang Orca would be a pretty interesting fight for him, because he would be excited to take on someone like him, a pro hero that is very powerful and is no joke. But the thing is, Gang Orca isn't as strong as Izuku, so when the villains would come out and it would be time to basically take down Gang Orca and or the fake villains, Izuku would see Todoroki and Inasa actually kind of clashing with their own abilities. Izuku would tell them to leave it to him and that they're not truly working together properly, and if they weren't going to work together properly, they shouldn't even be fighting next to each other. That they need to figure it out ASAP, or they're going to truly lose a ton from this experience. In which Izuku would come slamming down as he would then kick Gang Orca, as he would see this wind and fire then spiral around them both. Izuku would smile as he says that it seems like this is the perfect chance for him to get his one-on-one fight. Gang Orca then saying that he knows the kid. The kid's overconfident. The kid, he doesn't ask for help normally, so why ask for help now? He doesn't need this fire and wind, right? In which Izuku shrugs his shoulders and says that he now understands that being a hero is more than just finding that thrill of a fight. He needs to really understand how to properly work with other people and how to properly approach scenarios. And this scenario, well, will eliminate or kind of, deter a strong villain from hurting anyone else. Izuku would then put the hands on Gang Orca, and Gang Orca would fall short in terms of how strong he truly is in comparison to Izuku. Izuku would, though, lower his power just a little bit to have a decently fun fight, but still, he would be able to beat Gang Orca, and it would lead to him capturing him, and eventually the sirens would sound and everybody would stop fighting, and everybody would be told that the provisional hero license exam is over. Everybody would be kind of in awe about what Izuku was able to do, and it's pretty obvious that these other classes and these other schools are pretty excited to basically see Izuku do what he's doing, because they saw the UA Sports Festival and they knew how strong he was, but seeing it in first person and seeing it in person in general is kind of just making them completely awe-inspired. The fact that Izuku is able to do the things he does is just incredible. It's amazing. But at the same time, they can't be too fanboy or fangirl type of people, but still, they can still enjoy what they saw. In which this would eventually lead them to getting their provisional hero license, which, he would get his, but some other people wouldn't actually get theirs, failing, unfortunately, early on, and Izuku would finally be excited about getting his chance about being a true hero, at least a hero in terms of the law sense, because he wasn't actually, in a legal hero for a while. And now he somewhat is, and which he's excited. And the first thing he hears about when he gets into one of his classes with Aizawa is that there's going to be a work study, in which, of course, the big three themselves are going to explain and tell what the work study is all about. In which Izuku is thrilled about this, hearing it from Mirio, but of course you have the funny interaction with Nejire and also Tamaki. But Mirio would tell them all that they're going to all fight, that Mirio is going to fight every single one of them at once, in which when they all go out to the gym, well, Izuku is excited for this, but this is training. He doesn't want to fight him all at once, so he literally stands there and waits for all of his classmates to basically lose. Now, this isn't like your normal, typical villain scenario, so he doesn't really see an issue with him doing this, in which Aizawa thought that he probably would end up doing this, and a fight with him and Mirio one-on-one would be an interesting thing to watch. So Aizawa watches closely as Izuku and Mirio would clash. And yes, the permeation quirk that Mirio has is very, very difficult to actually get around, and it's actually really hard to judge. And eventually he would come out of nowhere and almost punch Izuku in the face, but in a matter of a split second, he would dodge it. It's as if something told him that the punch was coming before it actually happened. Izuku awakening another quirk known as Danger Sense, something he didn't even know existed really within him, but he was able to now dodge even a Mirio that he literally doesn't see coming. And he's able to parry, dodge, and then find an opening, eventually getting an opportunity to lay a punch on Mirio's chest, slamming him into the ground. Mirio would then wave off and call it quits, saying that he doesn't want to fight the kid to the death, in which Izuku says that he was never going to fight him to the death, just until he was probably incapacitated, in which Mirio would laugh a little bit, asking if he's kidding, but Izuku says that, yeah, sure, I was kidding, that's what I was doing. In which, of course, Mirio would eventually talk to the kid about going to Sir Night-Eye, and that he actually really wants to work with him, that he's excited to basically work with Izuku, but don't tell Sir Night-Eye that he said that. But it seems like he holds Izuku in very high regards, in which that's exactly what Sir Night-Eye tells him when they get there. Sir Night-Eye would tell him that it seems that he's very good at being the successor of All Might. And on top of that, he cleaned up some of his, let's just say, idiot parts of his personality. And Izuku does say that he apologizes that he feels that way, but he still holds on to the want of fighting and still enjoys it so much. But he does understand that being a hero is beyond just fighting, and he understands that risking other people's lives is a big, let's just say, no. And he still would admit that he gets caught up sometimes in the enjoyment of the fights, depending on who he's fighting. But at the same time, he does get pretty quick to finishing off villains when he notices that the fight needs to end there and now. And trust me, he knows sometimes that villains like All For One can't be messed with and can't be just allowed to leave and can't be just allowed to just do their own thing. Which Izuku in this world, yes, he has Goku's mindset, but in this world, it has taught him that quite a bit, because it is not your normal, typical, I'm going to fight bad guys. It is literally a world full of actual people who are deemed as heroes, in which that is something that he really takes to heart, even if he really does love fighting to a large degree. Which Sir Night-Eye is happy to hear that Izuku has made such progress, not only in his strength, but also in his mindset, but also the fact that he needs some help taking down and actually defeating, well, Overhaul himself, the leader of the Shihazaikai. Overhaul is a very, very, very strong foe, but someone who really is good at covering up his tracks. But it seems like he's not too good at it, because eventually Izuku and Mirio would be on a patrol, and they would bump directly into him, and there would be somebody with him, Eri, a little girl, and Izuku sees this and immediately is overwhelmed with emotion, thinking that the little girl is getting abused, getting hurt, being held hostage, all of these things rushing through his head. And as he looks back up at Overhaul, anger would go threading through his body, and he would begin thinking about the potential of what would have happened if he wasn't there to save Koda, what that monster would have done if he wasn't there to save Koda. And he will never decide to go the opposite direction. Izuku thinks to himself that if he wasn't there to save Koda, that Koda would have died. So what happens if he allows Overhaul to leave now? Would Eri die? Would this little girl, who seems so innocent, seems so helpless, will she die? That's what he's thinking about, and he refuses to allow something like that to happen, and he's never going to allow it to happen, in which he would immediately move Eri out of the way, putting her kind of out of harm's way, and Mirio would realize quickly that they would have no choice but to approach this in a fight. They would have no choice into actually battling Overhaul and hopefully minimizing damage in the city. So the fight between Izuku Midoriya, Overhaul, and also Mirio Togata is about to begin. Mirio and Deku versus Overhaul is about to start and about to be a, well, hopefully not catastrophic event for the city that is currently nearby, but that is going to have to wait for the next part or the final part of What If Deku Had Goku's Mindset. Izuku Midoriya, Mirio Togata will face off with Overhaul right now. Izuku faces off with Overhaul and they begin to scrap. But it's pretty obvious that in terms of a technical martial arts and also just full-on fighting, that Izuku outclasses him by quite a bit. And, well, let's just say this. Izuku continues an assault on Overhaul and begins to be picking up the pace extremely quickly. He's going at things extremely fast, fighting and brawling extremely quickly, and it's pretty obvious that Overhaul is getting massively overwhelmed. So he begins to try to turn the tide of the battle, trying to do various amounts of things, like utilizing his quirk to basically send spikes and different things at Izuku, but Izuku is unrelenting. He refuses to allow anything to get in his way, and with the utilization of 80 to 85% of One For All, Overhaul is massively behind in this fight, and even without Mirio's help, he would be destroying him at this point, but with Mirio's help and their combined tag team skills, with Mirio's just power and speed alongside it, it's obvious that Overhaul is massively overwhelmed and unable to actually react to anything that's going on, eventually leading to Izuku grabbing onto Overhaul with Blackwhip, slamming him on the ground, and capturing him entirely. Izuku would have Overhaul completely pinned and also subdued, and Izuku would watch as Mirio would go in for the final blow or the final hit and finish off Overhaul, knocking him out and defeating one of the biggest villains that they needed to handle in Japan in general, and which is pretty surprising because frankly there's just no way that things went so easily, that everything went so basic, that they were able to defeat him so quickly, and they were able to defeat him with very few casualties and really nothing to write home about. It's kind of an odd thing to even think about, because how was he just, losing so quickly? How did they defeat him so easily? In which the real answer is that Izuku's power combined with Mirio's technique and all of their techniques combined, it was pretty obvious that they were outclassing Overhaul. And Overhaul, on top of that, was not prepared and ready for a fight. Was far from ready for a fight against someone like Izuku and against someone like Mirio. He was just not ready. So it would leave him open and many others open, basically leading them down the path of, or Overhaul down the path of being defeated very quickly. And of course, they're going to have to deal with some things coming up very soon as well. But as Mirio and Izuku are actually heading out and they're about to go tell Sir Night-Eye of the news with Eri in hand, they would hear rumbling. They would hear the shaking and quaking of something coming, and Izuku doesn't know what it is, but he has a bad feeling about this. Danger sense begins to go crazy, telling him to basically move out of the way, get out of the way right now, in which Izuku would push Mirio and Eri out of the way as Gigantomachia would come barreling forward, punching them and sending them flying. And he would send Izuku flying through building after building. Izuku would then begin to fly upwards using floats, and he would look to see where this monster is. Seeing this giant being towering over even buildings, Izuku would charge in and would try to land hits to Gigantomachia, trying to take out its legs. But Gigantomachia's durability is insane. He even tries to wrap Blackwhip around his legs to get him down, but it's really difficult to actually get Gigantomachia to his knees and or to his to the ground itself. He tries, but he struggles. He struggles his way, but luckily, Mirio was able to get Eri out of harm's way, and Izuku continues to try and stall for time against this monstrous creature. taking blow after blow, but also returning a hit and also hit after hit against Gigantomachia as well. And it seems like he's really just stalling for time as the heroes begin to kind of gather a unit that can come and help defeat Gigantomachia. But Izuku would be struggling. He could feel that his body is hurting more and more, and it doesn't seem like he's actually making sustainable work or damage to Gigantomachia. He tries to actually, utilize 100% of One for All, and every single punch he uses on Gigantomachia, yes, it damages him slightly, but also it hurts Izuku pretty much as well. So he's really stalling out and trying to damage him as much as possible, stall him out, and kind of make him gain wear and tear, hoping that the other heroes eventually kind of come and help out to a large degree. He tries to take him down once again, but luckily enough, many other heroes begin to arrive, helping Izuku out, and actually trying to get Gigantomachia off his feet. Eventually, with all the help of a ton of heroes, including Mirio, Sir Nidai, a ton of other heroes that are these giant form-like heroes, like Mount Lady and Ryukyu, all of these are helping massively, and they're all doing their absolute best, and eventually they're able to take him off his feet. This would lead him to basically seeing Midnight actually utilizing her quirk as well, trying to subdue Gigantomachia, in which Izuku just continues to try and uphold an onslaught on him, and also kind of uphold Blackwhip surrounding him entirely. He's using everything in his arsenal to subdue Gigantomachia, and eventually they're able to get him down and knock him out. It took we're talking tons of heroes to do it, and this was a scary thing for them because all they can think about is the fact that Gigantomachia was powerful. So much so that if Overhaul or All For One or other villains were combined with his strength, they might have not been able to handle him the way that they could have handled him. They weren't prepared. They weren't ready. And Gigantomachia was a surprise that they weren't ready for at all. But luckily enough, they were able to survive, and they were able to struggle their way through and defeat Gigantomachia with the help of a stockpile of heroes. We're talking countless numbers of them, but luckily enough, they were able to help out, and a lot of them were able to basically have a good showing here against Gigantomachia, and Izuku would just be happy that it would be handled for the most part. But this isn't the only thing that they're going to have to handle. They're gonna have to deal with Overhaul's Shihazaikai, and there is some, let's just say, issues with that as well. It's, for starters, trying to find the base of the Shihazaikai was pretty damn difficult. But on top of that, it's just the fact that they don't really know what's coming. But luckily enough, they have the help of many very powerful heroes, including people like Izuku, Mirio, Sir Nidai, and Aizawa, and many others as well. So the raid on the Shihazaikai base wouldn't go too difficult. It wouldn't be too difficult in the long run. And Izuku would obviously be able to help out massively during this time. And they were able to eventually arrest and actually determine that the Shihazaikai would be put to rest for good, at least for now. And they're able to handle, for the most part, what they had to handle in terms of dealing with the aftermath of getting rid of, or putting the one and only Overhaul, inside the base, or inside of basically a prison, which they were able to handle, and they were able to handle Overhaul actually easier than the actual base of the Shihazaikai, which luckily enough was still able to be handled, but they still had some determining factors that they had to deal with throughout this time. But luckily no one got seriously hurt during this siege, and they were able to take them down and basically solidify the end of the Shihazaikai, or one of the most notorious gangs in Japan. Now, Izuku would head back to UA finally, after dealing with the issues of Gigantomachia, and also we obviously know the Shihazaikai was handled. but he does have some training he wants to get through with his classmates, and that is with Class 1A versus Class 1B. And it's a pretty fun time for him. It's nothing too crazy. He does face off with some fellow students that he definitely was interested in training with, but it's really nothing crazy for say, because frankly, none of them really give him a big run for his money, and a lot of these things that would have happened normally just don't end up occurring. Izuku would love the thrill of this fight and love training, and it wouldn't take long for him to master One for All entirely. And as a first year going on to being a second year, he would be at a totally different level, to a level to the point where a lot of people believe that he is skilled enough and prepared enough to be a full-time pro hero. But Izuku has a lot to learn nonetheless, as a student and then eventually as a hero. He's learning more and more, and he progresses through his powers, but also rescue skills in general too. And he continues to help out those in need, and eventually it would lead him to what he believes to be his destiny, and that is becoming a full-fledged hero. After a couple more years at UA, gaining the title of one of the members of the Big Three, Izuku would finally make it. Izuku would be finally known as this person that is peak of heroic nature, and also at the same time is a person who is extremely friendly and smiley, and frankly is seen as the future of heroes and also the future next All Might. Yes, it might sound cliche, but Izuku basically shows everybody why he is going to be better and also the next All Might in general, and everybody is excited to see what he's truly capable of. But he's not the only one that has exceeded expectations, and not the only one that has progressed with many different things. Katsuki Bakugo getting better and better with his hero work and starting at pretty much at the top of the food chain. And many other heroes that he's worked with, like Shoto Todoroki, has continued to level up and continued to gotten better and better throughout this time. And Izuku would eventually start his new agency and his own agency in the name of All Might. And he continues to work with Sir Night-Eye, in which him and Mirio would take up the Sir Night-Eye agency as their own, and would basically be a duo in it all. Mirio still having his quirk, and Mirio still being one of the top heroes, especially after he graduated as a third year. He would definitely be working with Izuku Midoriya and working together as Lemillion and Deku. They would both be working heavily together, and they would be working to preserve the peace that Japan has now upheld for a while, and continues to preserve that peace to this day. Izuku, Mirio, and many of his other classmates continue to show why the new generation of heroes, and the new generation of quirks, shows to be, or is proven to be, extremely powerful, and has proven to be extremely unique and also extremely proven. That is the main thing, and that is the main thing to be thinking about. And Izuku Midoriya continues to show why the potential is there, and the potential of him being the next number one hero is just a matter of time. Because Izuku Midoriya has plans to be like All Might, and the number one thing on that list is to be the number one hero in Japan and show every single person out there that he's not only the strongest, but he's also the greatest hero to ever exist. But with that said, that is the end of this What If. The end of what if Deku had Goku's mindset,